What's up, everyone? It's Cannan, back with another video, and if you're wondering why I'm doing such a random video, well, every now and then me and Jess like to do videos that gives you more insight into us, lets you learn more about us, and this is a particular thing that Jess has absolute no interest in. But me, I kind of consider myself a pretty big enthusiastic person on horror movies, so I thought, you know what? Why not do a video explaining some of my favorite horror movies that I really consider at the top of their genre. Now, this is going to be 4 movies from what I consider more of a classical area, mostly from 1970 to 1999, and then movies from the more modern time, from 2000 to today, 2022. And if you're wondering, why didn't you just wait until October to do this? October's already going to be stacked, so there would have been no time for this video. So, hope you enjoy it. If you do, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, click that like button, leave me a comment of what you think of my choices, plus your favorite choices. So, let's get to talking about some spoopy movies. Now, as I said, I love me a good horror movie. I love nothing better than to just turn the lights off, get a snack, and watch a horror movie. Jess, not so much. I have to watch them by myself, sadly. But, you know, I just enjoy that. I love it being late at night, and if I don't have a movie to watch, I'll watch like a spooky documentary on YouTube or something like that. So yes, I love it. Whenever we go out and I look at movies, you can ask Jess, I mostly either look or come home with a horror movie because I can't help it. I enjoy scary stuff. So the first film I'm going to talk about very briefly, I'm going to try not to talk about spoilers in case you've not seen it, but some of these movies, if you like horror movies, I'm sure you've seen them. But yeah, I'm not going to be talking about direction, you know, music. Well, I might talk about music a little bit. You know, I'm just going to talk about what I enjoy about these. So my first on the classic lineup is Halloween, the very first one from 1978. Now, I like slasher films, but I have to be in the mood for them. Halloween is the only one that I can watch at any time. We always watch it on Halloween. And what can I say? For this movie to be as simple as it is, it just checks all the boxes. It's creepy. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. You don't know what's gonna happen. The fact that the budget for this movie had to have been so cheap that they left cigarette smoke from the crew in the film because it was captured on the film, and they didn't reshoot it or anything because they probably didn't have time or money to keep reshooting. But, you know, just, I don't know, this movie just encapsulates the horror that is supposed to relate to Halloween night. It's supposed to be a night of horrible things, really, you know, if you think about it, you know. The fact that you don't see Michael Myers a whole lot in it, which to me, less is better. It's so much scarier the less you see. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, a very young Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, this is pretty much the movie that for a lot of people started her career. The fact that she kind of breaks the mold of a horror movie character who actually does drugs but lives, you know, because that's one of the things. If you do drugs in a horror movie, you die. But that's my big kudos to this movie and why I enjoy it so much, is because, yes, it's a slasher film, but it's so simple. It uses some of the most simple horror movie techniques, and it works. And the fact that you do not see a lot of blood in this movie. There is very little blood, if any at all, in the entire movie, and that is amazing that you can make a slasher film that is talked about even today and is considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and there's not a lot of blood in it. Who would have thought? But yes, Halloween from 1978 is my all-time favorite slasher film. Second would probably be the first Friday the 13th, but I think Halloween is so much of a better film than Friday the 13th. And it's, you know, it's kind of wild, you know, to remember that at least at that time, there wasn't a plan for a sequel. John Carpenter did not want to do a sequel. He was pretty much talked into doing Halloween 2. But, you know, I remember first seeing this movie when I was a kid, and at that time I was used to more in-your-face horror. So when I was a kid, I didn't find it all that scary, but as I got older, I learned to appreciate it. And that's one of those, this is definitely one of those movies that if you don't get it at one point, give it a couple of more watches and you'll get it eventually. Next is a sci-fi horror movie from 1979, and that is the first Alien movie. And, you know, there's a lot of people that don't like sci-fi horror, and there's also a lot of people who don't think sci-fi horror is a thing. They think it's either horror or sci-fi, but have them watch Alien, and that will tell you that, yes, there is such thing as sci-fi horror. Once again, the same thing from Halloween, less is more. There's a good while where you don't actually see the full alien for the longest time. And whenever it does show up, it's quick, you know, and there's a lot of times where it'll show you a little bit of a kill, but then they'll go to another scene because, you know, you're left with your imagination, and that sometimes is way more creepy. And the fact that they're, you know, you're on this humongous ship, you know, and they made it claustrophobic. They made it creepy, you know. And, you know, Sigourney Weaver is amazing in this movie. It's got some of the most, like, I remember when Dallas is in the vents looking for the xenomorph, and, you know, he turns and there it is. You get that really good jump scare. That jump scare got me so bad when I first saw this movie. So yeah, that's really all I can say really, is it's sci-fi horror at its best. The sequel, Aliens, was all right. Like, a lot of people say that's a perfect sequel. My only problem with it is it went more of an action route. It really wasn't much of a horror movie. And then you got Alien 3 and all the others that come after that, and boy, I will admit I kind of did like Prometheus a little bit. Alien Covenant was all right. There's talks there's going to be another one. We'll see how good it is, but I really wish they would go back to this formula. Just a gritty, slow-paced horror film. But it, like, if you don't like sci-fi horror, that's fine, but at least give Alien a shot. It's definitely worth a watch. The next one is from 1980, and I can watch this movie almost endlessly. I'll finish it and I'll start it right back over. I love this movie, and that is The Shining. Now, I know there's a bit of controversy. There's people who are on Stanley Kubrick's side and love this movie, thinks it's the best thing ever. Then you got people who are on Stephen King's side who thinks it's a travesty. Stephen King did not like this movie at all. And you know, it's wild. When this movie first came out, a lot of people did not like it. They didn't like Shelley Duvall's acting. They didn't like Jack Nicholson's acting in it. As time went on, though, it developed more of a following, and now many consider it one of the best horror movies of all time, including myself. Now, I've never read the original book. I watched some of the television series version. I gotta say, the television series version is good in some parts, but it gets really tacky in some areas. To me, the movie version is probably one of the best haunted hotel, you know, haunted house ghost movies. Like, it is just so perfect. It's definitely one of those movies that you gotta watch more than once to catch a lot of things, and to this day there are still theories about it. You know, a lot of people notice that the Overlook Hotel actually seems to shift in its size and all that, because there's a lot of rooms in the hotel that don't seem like they would fit in how you see the building from the outside. So it's like the hotel has a mind of its own. But yes, I love this movie. I love Jack Nicholson's acting in this. I think this is one of his best performances in any movie he ever did. It's creepy. It'll definitely give you chills in some areas. There's some parts that make you chuckle a little bit, like especially with how out there Jack's acting is, but that's what makes it great. He legit comes off as a psychopath even before he does lose his mind. And of course you got the whole, you know, here's Johnny, and I think I've read that was actually not in the original script. It was it was pretty much Jack Nicholson on the spot coming up with it, and they kept it. You know, that's why, because that's become such an iconic scene in movies, you know, not just in horror movies, but in movies altogether. It's been parodied a lot, and yeah, just awesome movie. If you've never seen The Shining and you love horror movies, you need to watch it. It is such, and it's got so much, there's so much lore that people have developed into this movie, and like, the fact that I love this movie so much, I would beg Jess, if we ever had the money and the means to go stay at the Stanley Hotel, which is a real-life hotel that the Overlook Hotel is based off of, and it's considered one of the most haunted places in the world. So yeah, great movie. Cannot give it more thumbs up or more kudos. One of the best horror movies ever made. And the last on the my classic scale is, this is the only movie on the list that I was alive when it first came out. Bought it on VHS the very first day it out. My hype for this movie was so high when it came out. I don't know why. I didn't go see it in theaters. I think I was like in 5th or 6th grade when this movie came out, so I had to wait for it to come out on VHS, and it gets a bad rap. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes when this comes up, but let me explain why I love this movie so much. And that is the Blair Witch Project from 1999. I love this movie. And very quick little side note, this is one horror movie Jess can actually watch. I know some people are going to say, well, it's because it's not that scary. Trust me, what makes this movie scary is if you put yourself in the actor's shoes. If you went out to these woods and got lost, couldn't find your way out, you were hearing some really weird stuff at night, that would scare anybody, especially if you didn't have any means of protecting yourself. And like, you gotta put yourself in their shoes. Like, the moment you started going hungry, started losing your mind a little bit because you're literally stuck and can't find your way out, and you know there's, at least it seems like something is hunting you, that would be one of the most terrifying moments that anybody could go through. So that's why I love this movie. For the longest time after I saw this movie, I wanted to get into documentary filmmaking or make my own found footage film, and this movie awakened my love for creepy, spooky woods. You can ask Jess, if anything that takes place in creepy woods, I'm all there. Like, I love it. I love hearing stories about woods that are supposed to be haunted. I don't know, to me, the woods are scarier than a haunted, dilapidated building. You can at least get out of the building. Woods, it's going to take you a while to get out, and it could be anywhere. Especially the woods at night. You have no idea what's looking back at you that you can't see. And also, the marketing for this movie, they legit had people thinking that this really happened. Even my older sister, when they were, talking about this movie, she was like, oh yeah, I seem to remember hearing stuff about that when none of it ever happened. But like the documentaries they did, like The Curse of the Blair Witch that aired on the Sci-Fi Channel, it may be scarier than the actual movie, because that documentary, the music they used and all that, it freaked me out. Like, I couldn't sleep the night after I saw that documentary. There was other ones that came out, like the Burkittsville 7, Sticks and Stones. They all came out and were like exclusives to, like, if you bought it, if you got the movie from a specific place, like Blockbuster and all that. Boy, remember when Blockbuster Video existed? But yeah, like if you find this movie anywhere on like DVD, it'll come with Curse of the Blair Witch. Some reason they've never come out with a version that came with all those documentaries. I would love for them to do that. But yeah, I forgot why Jess said that she can actually watch them. I guess because it's got no in-your-face jump scares. It's got no blood. That's the things that get Jess really bad, is jump scares and blood. But if you've never seen the Blair Witch Project because you've seen too many people bad talk it, please watch it. What the movie is, in your opinion, is more important than what someone else says. Because there's been movies that people hated that I've loved. There's been movies that people loved and I hated. It's always form your own opinion, but for me, this movie does a lot of things well. It's found footage at its best, and like I said, it had one of the best marketing campaigns ever to make you really think this movie, that the events around this movie actually happened. One of the best horror movies in the world, in my opinion. Alright, so now we are moving to more recent movies, starting from 2000 to 2022. And the first one is the first Conjuring from 2013. I love this movie. And tell you the truth, before this movie, I started kind of falling out of love of mainstream horror movies because it just seems like nothing was coming out that interested me or I thought was scary. You know, for the longest time, the Saw movies were a thing, the Hostel movies were a thing. I'm not into torture movies. I'm just not. They don't do anything for me. And then, you know, finally in 2013, The Conjuring came out, and I had to go see this movie. It was a good old-fashioned haunted house movie, and I love those. I love simple haunted house movies. Now, of course, it had to do with, you know, the Warrens, which they have a very controversial, you know, reputation in the paranormal field. You know, no disrespect, as both of them have now passed. But I was very interested in this. I remember when I went and saw it, the main title sequence, it felt like a creepy old, like, you know, 90s, 80s like movie. Like, this how, you know, when the title of The Conjuring came down, the music they play, and they've done it for the three main Conjuring movies. They did it for part 2, and they did it for part 3. It's just, I don't know. This movie did so much for me as a horror fan. I loved it. It scared the crap out of me in a couple of parts. It jump scared me really good. It's just a really creepy movie that the tension just continues to build. Plus, you know, with the family, they've got all their daughters, which makes you sympathetic. They do break the one rule that I have in any kind of movie, and especially horror movies, is don't kill the dog. And they do that. So yeah, whenever you kill a dog, I'm like, I don't like that. Is it so weird that in horror movies we can see people get killed and it doesn't really do anything to us, but the moment an animal gets killed, we're like, no, don't do that. You know, it's really weird, isn't it? Anyway, kind of morbid, really. But yes, The Conjuring, if you've never seen this movie, please watch it. To me, it's a masterpiece as far as simple haunted house movies goes. I wish Jess liked horror movies so she could at least watch this, because I think it's just a must-see as far as just good old-fashioned horror goes. The next one is from 2015, and that is The Witch, or as it looks on the screen, The Vivitch. Now, one thing when I first saw this movie is I noticed it said A New England Folktale, and I was really hoping this was going to be the start of like an anthology-like series of like all these folk tales in horror movie fashion, and sadly, we didn't get that. I think the closest thing we got was that Hansel and Gretel movie that came out recently, which I've seen, and it was all right. It didn't do it for me in the long run, but once again, the concept of something as simple as forbidden, creepy woods, you know, and a lot of people I think would be turned off by this movie because of the dialogue. It does take place, like, I forgot exactly when it takes place, but it's out there. Like, they're speaking Old English where like every single sentence has like religious based text in it. And so, yeah, it's very hard to follow along in some cases if you don't really, because sometimes you're like, what the heck are they even saying, you know? But a very creepy movie in a lot of ways. The sense of dread the entire movie, like you just know things are not going to end happily no matter what. You know, you've got this family that's been outcast from the nearest settlement, which is like just miles and miles and miles and miles away. Their crops aren't growing. The father can't find anything to hunt. There's this border of woods that's around their settlement that just, they set up very, very early that there is something wrong here. And you know, for once, it's not hysteria. There is an actual witch out in the woods. Turns out there's a whole coven of them. But yeah, just a good old-fashioned spooky story in the form of a folk tale in a way that just gets better as it goes, because you just know things are not going to end well, and it doesn't. You know, it has a very bleak ending, but sometimes horror needs that. You know, not every story is a happy ending. And gotta tell you, in the next couple of movies, they're really devoid of a happy ending, except the last one, which there's still a lot of people who were like, I kind of see it as a happy ending, and we'll get to that. Next one is from 2018, and that is Hereditary. And I have got to say one word about this movie: anxiety. I love horror movies, and this movie gave me anxiety. I was like, I don't know how much more of this I can watch. I'm getting to the edge of my seat, and I'm about to fall into the floor. Like, once again, the air of dread, like there is just nothing good that's going to come of this movie. And it's also one of those movies that you've definitely got to pay attention to, which I think drives some people off on it. There's a lot of people I've seen that say they didn't like this movie. And it's definitely a movie you have to watch more than once to catch everything, like stuff in the background. And like, it's stuff in the background that when you notice it, you're like, oh my gosh, you know, like it scares the crap out of you. But there are moments in this movie that just scared the crap out of me. Stuff I didn't expect. It's like, to this day, I still, like, I'm sure there's stuff in this movie I've not caught that I'm like, okay, I need to watch this movie again and definitely pay attention. Because, man, there's just so much. Like, one example, there's a shot of their house during the daytime, and then it quickly changes to night, and there are people standing all outside their house, and it's really quick. If you don't watch it, you're going to miss it. But it's just like stuff like that. It's like once you see it, and you're like, oh my gosh. Yeah, this movie is creepy. It is anxiety ridden. Like I said, I love horror movies, and it gave me anxiety where I felt like I was going to have to pause the movie and breathe before I could finish it. But it's a ride. It's definitely a ride, and I would definitely recommend it. Now, the last movie came out in 2019. I didn't see it until this year, actually. And it's made by the same guy who did Hereditary, and that is Midsummer, or Midsummer, some people pronounce it. But if you thought that it was not possible to do a really good horror movie that takes place mostly in broad daylight, you need to watch this movie. Now, I'm not a big fan of people actually getting hurt by cults in real life. It's awful. It's brainwashing. But I do like a good cult horror story. So the thing about this movie is it's considered in a way a horror fairy tale, and really it is. It's got a lot of out there stuff in it. But it deals with stuff like, you know, dealing with loss, and, you know, and golly, there's so much handled in this movie. You know, the main character, Danny, is isolated in a lot of ways because her boyfriend is he's not affectionate. He's very distant. He pretty much gaslights her in a lot of ways. And she's dealing with a lot of stuff, and she has to do it all by herself. But then when they go to Sweden and get involved with this cult, they start, you know, showing her affection and, like, you know, saying, you know, you're not alone, you know, all that, and just a lot of stuff happens. But the ending is the most craziest thing. It's got a lot of people down the middle. People see this as a straight up horror movie that ends badly, but then there's some people who see it as a happy ending for the character of Danny. I'm not going to spoil it because I think everybody who is interested in horror movies that have not seen this movie needs to see it and experience the full ride and give your own interpretation of what you think the ending means. But man, this movie is a ride. Like, whoo. So yeah, I don't want to spoil it because it's the most recent movie on this list. I know there's probably a lot of people that have not seen it. I never saw it out in stores to buy. I had to order it off Amazon and have it shipped here before I saw it, but I've watched it a good 5 or 6 times. I enjoyed it greatly. So yeah, that is that's my list of some of my all-time favorite horror movies. Now, of course, there are other horror movies out there that I do greatly enjoy. I love almost the entire Conjuring universe. There are some that I like more than others. Of course, I love the Friday the 13th films. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But this is my core list of movies that I can watch at any time, and I enjoy each and every moment. They're not movies that I have to get in the mood for, you know? So yeah, that's about almost 30 minutes of me talking about horror movies. So I hope you stayed until the end, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like I said, please hit that subscribe button. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers before the end of 2021. We're getting really close, so really be appreciative if you would subscribe. Hit that like button, because hey, likes really help more people find the videos and the channel. So please hit that like button. If you do subscribe, hit that notification bell. That way you'll be alerted of all of our future uploads. We try and upload every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes we upload a little bit more. Depends on how much content is going on through the week. And yeah, leave us a comment. Let me know what you thought of my picks and what are some of your all-time favorite horror movies. As always, guys, this is Canaan. Me and Jess love you all very, very much. Stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.